Hello, good day, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Ask Abhijit show. Today is episode 236, and I'm going to be taking questions only from the live chat today. It's a completely interactive episode, absolutely no pre-selected questions. All right, so let's see. Before we begin, who all is on the live stream? I can see Matteo Perez from Texas. Hello. Somi Jain, Shailaja Pedakotla, Parijat Dikshit, Prakhar Gupta, Tushar Kalburgi. Hello. Namaste. Ashish Pandel, Sanya, Brevi, Astral, Anant Pai, Kapalin, Vidhi Manyar. Yes, it's on Miss Vidhi Manyar's recommendation that I'm doing this completely interactive today. So thank you, ma'am, for that suggestion. Shri Hari Arjun, Shraddha Kulkarni, Mr. 88ers, Tripti Mishra, Raj, Ashish Pandel, Anupam Jaiswal, Priyanshi Sood, Shreyas Jadhav, Geopolitical Dubey from Indore, Rangers Wolf, Avinash Suraj Raut, Sanya again, Brijesh SK, Supratim Datta, Pranav Sat Bhai, Rangers Wolf, Manu Krishna Varun, Xmas, Ymas, Zemus, Krishna Govinda, Alfred Ragunath, Baldev Rai from Suriname, Netherlands, Tanay Chandra Meet, Oscar Madison, Manu Krishna is Astral, Gautami A, Shri Hari Arjun, Suraj Kulkarni, Karthikeya Singh Rajput, Animish, um, Gokul Krishna, John Cena, Anshul Jubli, okay, Jai Guman, Tanay Chandra, Pavan Shetty, Man, Bear, Pig, Prakhar Mishra, Nishal Rai, Samrat, Volcano, Neo, Nomad, Ronnie, Reaper, Plays, Devik, Shriyan, Samrat Shukla, Aries, Manticore, Anshul Sinari, Abhishek Sahu, Viraj Ok, Kalyani, Deshmukh, Utsav Khatri, Random Skull, Chai, Anti Motion Clips, Ankit Pradhan, McLovin, Really Now, Bharat G, Meet Butt, Mr. Red Bird, and so many other people. So, okay, good evening, good day, everybody, and thank you so much for being on this live stream. With that said, please go ahead and ask your questions. I will take questions only from the live chat today. So let's see what questions you all have. A lot happening in the world. Um, let's see. Okay, what questions do we have? Manu Krishna says, how would you design an Indian nation essentially that would last 3,000 years from now? How can a nation grow indefinitely without collapsing like Rome or the Cholas? That's an interesting question. Do we know of any nation or geopolitical entity or any other such entity that has existed for 3,000 years? We know of civilizations that have existed longer. We are the oldest continuously existing civilization that still exists. We Indians. India is the oldest continuously existing civilization. It's not, look, this idea of a nation, that's a pretty recent idea. Historically, we had cultures and civilizations, and we had kingdoms and empires. Nation states is a very recent idea. It's an artificial kind of idea. I'm not sure how long it will last. Yesterday I did a podcast live stream with Dr. Gautam Desiraju, and he says that the age of empires is upon us again, and we're going to have four empires going forward, which is the US, China, Russia, and India. So the nation state system is an experiment, a temporary experiment. It will not last very long. So in that sense, I do concur with what Dr. Desiraju said yesterday. I agree with what he said. So nations are an artificial entity. Kingdoms and empires, that's something that historically has existed. So let's say you want an empire that lasts 3,000 years. Well, the first question you ask yourself is, has there ever been an empire that lasted 3,000 years? The answer is no. Okay. We've had dynasties that lasted like 2,000 years. The Cholas lasted almost 2,000 years as a dynasty. Definitely more than 1,000 years. When you look at the Roman Empire, it lasted about let's say 1,500 years. And some people will be surprised because you would imagine that Rome kind of disintegrated around 500 roughly AD, right? But that's the Western Roman Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire, based out of Constantinople, lasted until the 15th century. It did decline later, and it was overrun by the Turks eventually. But Rome, as an imperial entity, lasted about 1,500 years. So, yeah, 1,500 years, something can last. What about Egypt? The Egyptian empire, you can say it lasted 2000 plus years. So it's something that's possible. So yeah, there is some historical precedent, but if you're talking about 3000 years, you're kind of pushing the boundaries of what has historically occurred in the past. With all that said, if you want not a nation but an empire that lasts 3000 years, first of all, it needs to have a very strong cultural and civilizational scaffolding or superstructure that it builds upon. It needs a basis, a long-term basis, which is its civilizational identity and cultural identity. So that's something we have. That's an advantage we have. We have a culture, civilization that's probably 10,000 or more years old, right? So that's one great advantage we have. The Chinese have a similar advantage. Their culture may be 5,000 plus years old, perhaps. Yep. And nobody else has that. That sort of standing, long lasting culture or civilization. So we already have that. So then we need political stability. So you need a system, a political system that ensures there is stability even after transitions from one leader to the next. And obviously, the system should be such that it picks the right leader whenever a transition happens. When leader A, Emperor A, becomes old, let's say he or she is in his 70s, 80s, and it's time to move on to the next leader, then the system should pick the best possible next leader, which means that there should not be nepotism, which generally in empires you have the eldest son or the best son who takes the throne or the crown going forward. But ideally you want it to be non-nepotistic. So the system has to be such that it will always pick the best possible successor, so that the right things keep on happening, strengthening the military, strengthening focusing on the right things like science and technology, strengthening culture, all of that. So you need to have a system that takes care of all these things. So what do you need? You need a strong civilizational scaffolding, which we have. You need a great education system that teaches the citizens the right values and critical thinking and all of that, science, technology, and culture, all of that. You need that. That's what we don't have. So that's one thing that needs to be created. Our education system is one of the worst in the world today. Then you need a civilization language, one language, okay, not 78 languages and all that nonsense. You need one language that is the supreme language, and all other languages are subsidiary. That's how it works in an empire. Okay, democracy doesn't really work too well. Democracy creates disintegration. So you need a hybrid democracy, like Dr. Desi Raja was saying yesterday. You need hybrid democracy, a hybrid model. That's what I have been saying for years. So you need that sort of system. So you need a good education system. You need a strong civilizational scaffolding. You need the right system at the top, which is a non-democratic ruler. Because if a ruler has to go and beg to the people every 5 years based on popularity, your country, your empire will never last. You need to pick the right people and let them rule as long as they need to. And then the right sort of succession should happen. So the only way you can have something that lasts 3000 years, if it's possible, is through an imperial system, not a nation state system, or not through democracy. Okay? Because historically, democracies have never worked. Historically, empires have lasted. Empires and civilizations. So that's what I would do. Okay, Nomad Ronnie says, how to speak French like you? Well, how to speak French like me? First of all, you need to study French and learn French, learn the basics. It's not an easy language to learn, but it's an Indo-European language, so it's not that hard for us, as opposed to, let's say, learning Chinese or Arabic or Swahili or Algonquian or something. So French is an Indo-European language. It's reasonably similar to our languages, Indian languages, reasonably. So first of all, there's that. So you have to go through it step by step. You have to, if you want to learn a language, you have to immerse yourself in an environment where that's the only language that's around. So that's obviously not possible if you're living outside of France, but you need to spend a set number of minutes or hours every day practicing, learning, pushing yourself. And look, if you really want to learn a language, if you're desperate to learn a language, you can get a pretty good working knowledge of a language in a week's time. If you completely immerse yourself and you force yourself to study the language in a challenging manner, like 10, 12 hours a day, in a week's time, you'll be speaking whatever language you want to a reasonable level of competence. I mean, you can converse with people. You're, you'll speak broken kind of French or whatever, but at least you'll be able to converse with people. So whether it's French, whether it's Italian, Spanish, whatever language, you can learn in a week if you want. But the point is, if you want to learn to a high level of proficiency, you have to keep on doing it over and over again for a long, long period of time. Now, I learned French as a kid. Okay, and as a kid, you pick up languages like that. It's very fast. It's very easy. You don't even realize when you learned. I did not take French lessons or something. I learned because I was immersed in a French environment. I just picked it up. I did not take a single French class or lesson. I just picked it up in like 2-3 months. So as a kid, you have that advantage that you absorb languages very fast. But as an adult, if you want to learn, then you have to spend time learning it systematically. And to speak it like a native, probably I have the pronunciation of a native because I lived in that, I spent time in a French speaking environment, significant amount of time. If you want to learn it like that, then you actually have to spend time among the native speakers to pick up those accents and those nuances. So that's what you need to do. It applies not just to French, but to any language whatsoever. All right. Let's see. What other questions do we have? We have lots of questions. Okay, Rashmi says, I want to learn Sanskrit and I want to talk fluently. Well, it's possible. Sanskrit is our mother language, actually. I mean, today nobody says Sanskrit is their mother tongue. Everybody has some language, and our languages are upper branch languages. Whether it is whatever, Hindi, Marathi, Telugu, Bengali, Gujarati, Tamil, Kannada, whatever it is, these are all newer languages. They all have a lot of vocabulary that's derived from Sanskrit. I think Tamil must have 40%, Telugu must have 40%, Malayalam must have about 50% Sanskrit vocabulary. So we all use Sanskrit vocabulary. We all use grammatical constructs that come out of Sanskrit, but we don't realize Sanskrit is still more or less alive in whatever languages we speak. So if you want to learn actual Sanskrit and speak proper, fluent Sanskrit, once again, you have to spend a couple of hours every day studying. And so the best book I know of is a book that's in Hindi, it's not in English. It's called Sanskrit Swayam Shikshak. Sanskrit Swayam Shikshak. It's a pretty cheap book. And if you study that book like an hour a day, in 3 months, you will be probably speaking Sanskrit. You'll be able to converse in Sanskrit. And that will give you the foundation to learn Sanskrit to whatever level of competence and fluency that you want. So if you really want to do something, well, get going. No one's stopping you. And all the information that you need is available for pretty cheap. That book, Sanskrit Swayam Shikshak, may cost, I don't know, $100-$200. I'm sure anybody can afford that. If you are a student, maybe you can spend some time and save money and buy it. So yeah, if you take that book and if you already know Hindi, you will be able to speak Sanskrit, have a conversation in Sanskrit in 3 months. And then you keep studying and you can speak fluently. Okay, Vidhi says, what do you think about the idea of having my own mental health company, providing therapies combined with ancient Indian knowledge instead of working in anti-India snake pits and schools? I think it's a great idea. Look, mental health is a challenge for a lot of people today. Today's environment is pretty stressful. We have an overload of noise and information. In the past, the world was much slower paced. Today, the world is fast paced. It's changing a lot. So many new things happening all the time. So a lot of people seem to be facing mental health challenges. I remember about 5 years ago during the lockdown, it was a very, very big deal. This mental health thing. Every other podcast was talking about mental health those days, and I think it's always been a challenge for a lot of people. In the past, it was you do not really speak about that, but now it's okay to speak about it apparently. So I think it's if you want to start a company that provides therapies and solutions to mental health issues, I think it's an evergreen field. And if your therapies and solutions that you provide are good, then you will do really well, right? So it's a great idea. But to succeed, ideas aren't enough. You need the right kind of execution. uh, so I think it's a great idea. You need to learn, you need to know how to execute it well. Maybe you can, look at case studies as to how companies succeed and fail, how to create a startup, all of that stuff. I think it's a great idea. But don't just jump into it. Do a little bit of due diligence, a little bit of research, understand how to create a startup and all that. And you will need some funding as well. All that stuff will be there. But I think these days funding and everything is available much. It's much easier to get it than before. I think it's a great idea. And yeah, if you're not happy with wherever you're working, uh, it's something that is certainly something worth doing. So yes, I would say it's a good idea. It's a good idea, right? So all the best, ma'am. Um, Shyam Rathod says, "What are the relations? What's the relationship between the Romani people and the Banjaras?" That's an interesting question. So let's talk about, first of all, who are the Romani people, and then who are the Banjara people, right? Let's talk about the Banjaras first. So the Banjaras are a nomadic community, or a set of nomadic communities in that live in India today. Now, they generally seem to be associated with places like northern and western India, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and they're called by different names in different places, but overall they are called Banjaras. Right? They are nomadic people. They don't live in one place. They move from place to place and that sort of thing. Uh, and what's the origin? There seem to be various theories of origins of the Banjaras. One of the stories that one hears is that some of these Banjara people are the descendants of the soldiers of various Rajput kings who fought the Turks and lost, and refused to surrender and went out and lived in the forests. People like um, Maharana Pratap, Rana Kumbha, etc. One hears that their soldiers never ever surrendered. They went and lived in the forest, and their descendants still live a nomadic life. Um, and maybe so that's one origin story, and I'm sure there is a lot of truth behind that. I'm sure it doesn't apply to all Banjara people, but many of them. And maybe some other people always lived nomadically. I'm not really sure. I've not really studied and done the research into their origins. I'm not sure Indian historians have done proper research about this. But yes, it's a nomadic community, and they typically are employed, not employed, but their profession generally is uh, singing, dancing, all of that. They do folk singing and all. And they have kept lots of folk tunes, etc., alive through their music, and so on. And so that's the Banjaras. And the Romani people are Indian origin people who are a nomadic people in Europe, and they have faced persecution and horrible oppression for the past 1000 years. Now, what's the origin of the Romani people? They are also called gypsies. So, in the past, in Europe, it was believed in Europe that these people were of Egyptian origins. So, they were called Egyptians and eventually called gypsies. But these people, they call themselves either Romani or Sinti. Yeah. And there are other names applied to them: Kale, Kalderash, and so on. Um, so, the origin, these people, they speak in a language that is very closely related to Gujarati, Rajasthani, and Punjabi. Northern and Western Indian languages, very closely related to these languages. I think these three languages, Gujarati, Rajasthani, Punjabi, are the three closest languages today to the Romani language. So, how did these people end up in Europe? So, there are multiple theories to that as well. Dr. Ian Hancock is the first Romani person ever to get a PhD. Okay, so today the Romani people, they have European names mostly, and they have adopted various language, various religions just to survive. So most of them in Europe would be Christians today, and the ones who live in other countries like Turkey, they would be Muslims today. Some Romani people live in Egypt; they are Muslims there. Many Romani people live in Turkey today. About probably about 5% at least of Turkey's population could be of Romani origin, and they're all Muslims. Okay, they all practice Islam, and in Europe, most of them are Christians. Many of them are kind of perhaps reverting to some form of dharmic practice and so on. But yeah, at least nominally, most of them practice these other religions. Uh, so what's the origin story? And the Romani people have been horribly persecuted in Europe. There are places in the past, places like Germany and other countries, where if you were Romani, you would just be automatically sentenced to death. So lots of Romanis were just killed just for existing, for being Romani. Many of them were enslaved for generations, for centuries, and even today they are like second-class citizens in most European countries. They are still despised. They are not allowed to settle in cities, and they are made to exist on the fringes of society. Many of them don't have proper documentation, which means they are essentially stateless. Even today, they are treated with a tremendous amount of racism, and they are some of the most brilliant people in Europe today. Many of the top footballers in Europe are of Romani origin. Eric Cantona, one of the greatest French footballers, one of the legends of Manchester United, Eric Cantona, who is today an actor now. You want to see what it looks like? Let's take a look at Eric Cantona, one of the absolute legends of football. He is of Romani origin. Let us go here. Eric Cantona. So that is Eric Cantona, and he was one of the great French footballers and Manchester United footballers, one of the absolute greats and a bad boy of football. Who else do we have? Pirlo, yes, Romani. I can give you so many. Okay, let's just see Romani footballers. Romani football players. Here we have it. So many. Cantona, George Hagi, Quaresma, Christos Stoichkov, Pirlo, possibly Ronaldo. I'm not sure. So many. I can give you examples. Andrea Pirlo, obviously. Who else do we have? Quaresma is one of the greats. I believe Michael Ballack, Milan Baroš, yes. Michael Ballack of Germany. Zlatan Ibrahimovic is said to be of Romani origin. And who else do we have? Romani footballers. There's so many names here. Yeah, so I'll not go into all the details, but you get the point. And when it comes to people from other fields, some of the greatest musicians of all time in Europe are of Romani origin. Django Reinhardt, Gypsy Jazz. Django. You know what Django actually meant? It meant Jago, wake up. Django Reinhardt. Have you heard of Led Zeppelin? Led Zeppelin, right? I think some of you may know about Led Zeppelin. Their lead singer, Robert Plant, the guy who looks like a Viking, his mother was Gypsy, Romani, and so on. So that's who the Romani people are. Now, their origin is, I'll tell you what the origin story most likely is. Dr. Ian Hancock says that they are of Rajput origin. So when people like the Ghoris and Ghaznavis and the Turks, they attacked India, they took back millions of Indians as slaves. Okay. Many of these Indians who were taken as slaves died in the Hindu Kush mountains. That's why the mountains are called the Hindu Kush mountains, the killer of Hindus. And the rest who survived ended up in the slave bazaars of Samarkand and Bukhara, etc. And maybe at some point in time, they took too many slaves, and they didn't want to execute them and create a bloodbath in those places. In India, it was fine. So maybe they just took a whole bunch of people and said, get the hell out of here, but you're not allowed to go back to India, go west. And maybe that was the origin of the Romani people. We're not quite sure how it began, but it most likely originated in the slave bazaars of Samarkand and Bukhara and in the Turkic and Arabic world. Maybe there was a surplus of slaves taken from India, and the surplus slaves were just told to push off, but westwards, not back to India. And probably that is the origin of the Romani people. So the Romani and Banjara aren't related. The relation is that they are both of Indian origin, obviously, right? But many of the Romani people today in Europe, some of them look kind of European because some of them have intermarried at some point in time, some of their ancestors. Some of them look very Indian, some of them look very, very European. Most of them look more Indian than European. So that's the deal with the Romani people. Right. Okay. Some more questions. Rudraksh Manhas says, is the United States in decline? Really? Why does every analyst say that the US is not a superpower anymore? I don't know what analysts you're listening to. Those analysts are idiots. There are lots of if you're listening to Indian analysts, I'm sorry, but these people are they want to sensationalize stuff. These days it's all about Gehra Rajya, deep state, US is declining, nonsense. These people are clueless. I will not take any specific names because I don't follow any of them, so I have no idea who is saying what. Okay, let's look at the ground reality today. Okay, of the United States and the global geopolitical order. If we look at the military strength of the US today and the kind of destructive power it has at its disposal, and the kind of global geopolitical footprint it has, and the kind of power projection abilities the US has, it is absolutely clear that the US has never been more powerful than it is today. The US has never had as much destructive power at its disposal than it has today, military power. And its global power projection is all over the place. They have military bases, more than 800, 900, more than 800 military bases outside their territory, across the world, spread across the world. They can project power anywhere they want. They can intervene militarily anywhere in the world at 30 to 60 minutes notice. You call that a nation in decline, really? A power in decline? They are a power in the ascendancy, and they are on the verge of becoming a hyperpower from a superpower. The AI race, whoever wins that, and they have the biggest advantage in the AI race right now. So the AI race is one thing, and then there's the space race, and the US is clearly winning the space race at this stage in time. They are the only nation that have the ability right now to send people to Mars and to the moon and to colonize moon and the Mars. So by 2030, 31, they're going to have people on the moon, on Mars, and on the moon also. So when you have a footprint on the moon, on Mars, you are winning the AI race, and you have a global geopolitical power projection ability that allows you to intervene at 60 minutes notice anywhere in the world, and you control the global reserve currency and everything. Do you call that a nation in decline? You call that power in decline? I don't know what these people are smoking or drinking. Okay, these so-called analysts that say that the US is not a superpower anymore. Do they even? I mean, what is their definition of the term superpower? When you use a term, you need to know exactly how to define it. That's something that's inbuilt in me because of a scientific background. You don't use terms loosely. You have to know exactly what the definition of any term that you use is. So from my perspective, the term superpower, what does it mean? It means a power that can intervene anywhere in the world at 60 minutes notice, let's say. 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hour, whatever. It can intervene anywhere in the world on demand. That's a superpower. And there's only one nation in the world that can do it. That's the US. Sure, Russia can, eliminate any country in the world at 60 minutes notice, but they can't put boots on the ground at 60 minutes notice. The Russians. The US, in an hour or two, they can have boots on the ground essentially anywhere in the world, because they have military bases all across the world, spread everywhere. So the US can do it, Russia can't do it. And China is far away from doing that. So the US is the only superpower, and it's a superpower in the ascendancy. It's actually getting stronger. Yes, the outcome of the AI race will determine who is going to be ruling the world for the next 1,000 years. China is a big participant in that. So the US is very much neck to neck, you could say, perhaps with China. At least from what one sees in the public domain, it looks like it's neck to neck the race. But the US has a big head start over the Chinese. And what's happening behind closed doors is anyone's guess. What kind of capabilities the AI systems have behind closed doors? Because I assure you that what you see in public is only 1% of what's out there in terms of AI. So if you think that Chat GPT version whatever is the best, most powerful AI that we have today, I assure you that the hidden AI systems that they have are at least 100 times more powerful. Which means that they probably have AGI systems and ASI, probably close to ASI systems. It's possible. So whichever nation has reached that stage is going to rule the world. So India is out of the race, clearly. So is Russia, probably, unless they have something up their sleeve. Um, so I don't agree with these analysts who claim that the US is a nation or a power in decline. These people have no idea what they're talking about. Absolutely no idea. Right. Let's see interesting questions. Interesting questions. Okay, Geopolitical Dubey says, I saw your conversation with Gurudev Shri Shri Ravi Shankarji. Can you tell more about the original Shivling? How big was it then? We have no idea. We don't know how large it was. It is supposed to have, look, I think the eyewitness accounts say that it was a pretty large Shivling. Not sure how large. Was it man size? Was it 6 feet large? Was it bigger than that? Was it smaller? We're not quite sure. What we know is that it was a levitating object. It was a levitating Shivling. What does levitating mean? It was floating in midair. It was floating in midair because of magnetic properties. So you can make a magnet float in midair using other magnets. You can do that. So this object, this Shivling, one of the oldest Shivlings we had in our civilization, it was a magnetically levitating object. I'm not sure how large it was. Okay. It looks like it was whitish in color. And it was, I mean, when the barbarians, the Turks, they arrived there and they saw this, they were stupefied. They were staggered to see something like that. And they thought it was the work of, I don't know, whatever, and yeah, they broke it. So we don't know much more than that about the original Shivling. I haven't really read the historical text that may or may not describe what it originally looked like. But from what I know, it was a pretty large object and it was levitating. Everybody agrees about that. And it had magnetic properties. It was destroyed by the Turks and disappeared for 1,000 years. And now it has now been revealed to have been safeguarded by Agnihotri Brahmins in the southern part of India for 1,000 years. So when the destruction of the Somnath temple happened, there were Agnihotri Brahmins there in Somnath who originated in southern India. And they're the ones who rescued the broken fragments of the original Shivling and took them down south to southern India and kept them hidden for 1,000 years. And each fragment was shaped into a Shivling shape, because once you break a magnet, you can't put it back together again. It won't become whole again. So each of the fragments was then shaped into an individual Shivling, and each fragment was worshipped separately. And today, the fragments, I've seen at least 4 of those. And they still have magnetic properties. If you see the video, the conversation that I had with Gurudev Ravi Shankarji, he shows, that they still have magnetic properties. It's very clear. So that's what I can say about that. And if you see the conversation, you'll know that I have a personal connection with that original Shivling. Mr. 88 says, how exactly did Europeans conquer Africa and plunder Africa? First of all, let's talk about why they did this. So Africa is the largest continent. We haven't seen the map today. I mean, it's already been 35 minutes. We haven't opened the map. What's happening? All right, let's take a look at the map. Here's the map. We know where India is. Let's go westwards. And this is Africa here. All right. And if you look at the Mercator projection map and so on, it will look like Eurasia is larger than Africa, and maybe the Americas are similar size. But I'll assure you that if you look at if you actually look at the figures, then Africa is by far the largest continent, gigantic continent. It's way bigger than every other continent. Now, so it's Africa. If you look at the kind of resources it has, you will see that Africa holds more than half of the world's natural resources. Everything you can ask for, whether it is minerals, whether it is metals, iron, copper, gold, whatever raw materials you need of any kind, they're all available in Africa. You want uranium, you'll find uranium in Africa. There's tremendous amount of fertile land if you want to do agriculture, and so on and so forth. Everything that you can ask for, all raw materials are available in Africa, and that's why Africa was seen as a gold mine by the Europeans, and that's why they colonized parts of Africa, and there was a scramble for Africa. And the European powers, the colonizing powers, in the 19th century, divided Africa up among themselves. And that's why you see even today in Africa, you have nations whose boundaries are just straight lines, because the lazy colonizers, when they eventually departed, they just drew straight line boundaries between nations, and these are all artificially created nations. And because these artificially created nations have ethnic groups within them that historically did not belong together, that's why you have so many civil wars and so much unrest in Africa. So why did the Europeans conquer Africa and colonize Africa? Because of the natural resources. Because I mean, you want resources. You want to enrich yourself at somebody else's expense. It's as simple as that. Steal their resources and use them. That's why they did that. And how did they do it? Well, the Europeans already had a lot of practice and experience colonizing other countries, like the Americas. They destroyed North America and South America. They wiped out the native cultures there, right? And stole the land. And they also had experience, the Europeans, in India, how to suppress, how to take over a very large piece of territory, and suppress any dissent and crush revolts and all that. So they applied the same techniques and learnings in Africa. One of the easiest things to do is divide and conquer, divide and rule. So so that's how they did it. So the Europeans had superior technology. They had a lot of experience fighting nations and kingdoms and empires that had large manpower but inferior technology, and they knew how to divide and rule. So that's why they were able to gradually, step by step, in a reasonably short period of time, conquer all of Africa. So there are entire books written about this, but yeah, it's an interesting story as to how this happened, and it's tragic. They've completely destroyed Africa. Completely destroyed Africa. Today, if you see Africa, there are two major religions in Africa. Both are of foreign origin. Both are Abrahamic religions, and in some countries, both religions exist together, and there's a lot of bloodshed because of that. And Africa's original cultures have all been wiped out. Original governance systems have all disappeared. Africans are rootless today. They don't know their history. Their history has been eradicated. Their cultures have been eradicated. They worship foreign gods and speak foreign languages. Just like India, where in India, everybody thinks that speaking English makes you superior to others. And if you speak English, you can get good jobs. If you can't speak English, you can't get good jobs, that sort of thing. In Africa, it's mainly either English or French. So there's lots of parts of Africa where if you want to appear civilized and cultured, you have to speak French. So once again, let's go on the screen. And what are these nations I'm talking about? So I'm talking about the Western African nations, the ECOWAS nations, the nations where you have the CFA franc. That's the currency. Nations. See, if you go to places like Libya, Algeria, Morocco, Western Sahara, Mauritania, Mali, Niger, Chad, Burkina Faso, Senegal, and so on and so forth, Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon, Yaoundé, so on. Lots of these nations, these are francophone nations. The other nations, like in southern parts of Africa, etc., you speak English there. In South Africa, you speak either English or Afrikaans. In Namibia, again, English or Afrikaans, and so on. So yeah, Africa is deeply colonized even today. Today, it's colonized by proxy. You have dictators who run most of Africa, and the dictators are proxies for foreign powers, and so on. So that is the deal. That's how it works in Africa today. Okay. Listen, this question I've been getting for so long. Why do the terms BC and AD exist? Why can't we simply say years ago? Is it just the Christian mindset at work here, or is there something useful in this? Penguin, blue, waving tear. Look, why do the terms BC and AD exist? It's because of the Christian mindset. We don't need to use them, but it's just a convention. If you have a degree in history, you want to use these terms because every academic domain has its jargon. It's what the people in the inner circle speak. So if you meet a bunch of people who are, let's say, who have a background in computer science, they will use computer science jargon. If you meet a bunch of physicists, they'll speak a different sort of language that only they understand. If you meet a bunch of mathematicians, they have their own inner terminology that they use and others can't understand. Similarly, historians want to use certain terminologies that set them apart from everybody else. So they want to use terms like BC and AD, and these days it is CE and BCE. So BC used to mean before Christ. AD used to mean Anno Domino, which means the year of our Lord. What Lord? God only knows. The gods only know. It's a Christian God, right? Obviously. BC means before Christ. AD means Anno Domino. Today it is BCE and CE. CE means common era, and BCE means before common era. What's the common era? It's a Christian era. So in the year 1, Mr. Christ is supposed to have been born, and so on. So that's why these terms exist. These are Eurocentric Christian terms. Today they try to cloak that by using BCE and CE, but it's still the same thing. So we certainly can say years ago. We certainly can. But then you have to keep on calculating. See, you need a reference point somewhere. So let's say I write an article in the year 2015, and I say X number of years ago. Now, if you're reading this article in 2025, you may have to do a little bit of mental calculation. Okay, he wrote the article in 2015. He said 387 years ago. So what does it exactly mean? And what does it mean from my perspective from 2025? It's a bit of a mental calculation, and most people can't do that math. Math hurts people's brains, right? So that's why you need a reference point somewhere. So that's why BC AD works. If you say 1456 AD, what happened then? 1456 AD. The conquest of Constantinople by Selim, whatever the hell he was. So Fatih. So that BC AD thing, it gives you a reference point. Of course, we don't have to use that. We can use some other reference point. We have our own calendar systems. We have the Shaka calendar. We have the Vikram Samvat calendar, in which the year 1 is something else. It's not the BC AD terminology, right? Or we used to have the Saptarshi calendar, which when the Greeks came to India around what was it? About 2,500 years ago, they said it was in existence for 6,000 years, 6,000 plus years. So we had our own calendrical systems, and we can use those dates if we want. But today, I mean, in 1947, there was the option that India could have adopted the Vikram Samvat or the Shaka calendar, but we chose to adopt the Christian calendar. Our so-called founding fathers, alleged founding fathers, they decided that. There are nations that have their own calendrical systems even today. The Persians use a different calendar in Persia. They don't use the Christian calendar, but we do. So we have chosen to use somebody else's inferior calendar. We have chosen to say that they are better than us. And that's why these terms exist. So actually, it's a good question, but that's just the way it is. It's a sign of mental colonization. Let the West use whatever terms they want to use. We don't have to do that. We are an older and greater civilization, but we have small people who made decisions for us. People who are not worthy of being called our leaders, who made these decisions for us. And that's why it has brought our standards down in this country. And that's why these are so many of the reasons put together why the average Indian person has a tremendous inferiority complex without realizing it. The moment they see a person from the West, they automatically feel that person is better than and greater than us. I mean, I'll tell you what. You watch various YouTube videos of Westerners, white people going to Africa, and see how the Africans interact with these white people. They may go to a pretty, poor country, like let's say Mali or Ghana or whatever. Tremendously poor country, but the Africans who interact with these white people there, they don't seem to have an inferiority complex. They don't seem to automatically say, "Oh, you are a sir and we are inferior." If you see Afghans interacting with people from Europe, You don't see the Afghans bowing down and bowing and scraping to Europeans. But every time you see the average Indian interacting with a European, the average Indian is like, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, yes madam. So Indians have this tremendous inferiority complex. 1,000 years ago we weren't like this, but today we are like this. It's because of all of these things. It's because of all these little microscopic, 4 feet tall, metaphorically, that sort of leaders who became our allegedly our leaders and made all these decisions for us, that you know create this inferiority complex. So it's tremendously frustrating, and that's why I don't like to take up these questions. I've taken them a lot of this before, but it's a good question, and I'm glad you asked it, and I'm glad I took it today. Okay. B. Harsh Nagar says, how do you read about Indian history? As unlike other histories, Indian history changes with each author. Original texts findings don't differ as much as modern authors. Please suggest some authors. I don't know any authors. Indian history, if you want to read Indian history, you have to read. How do you read Indian history? Look, I have a bunch of books here. Okay. Not these here. There's another bookshelf over here, which you're not able to see, and there are more bookshelves here. I have a tremendous amount of books. Many of these books are about Indian history. I have a whole section of books about Indian history. Some of them are by people like R.C. Majumdar. Some are by foreign authors, and so on. Okay. A.L. Basham, the wonder that was India, uh, and so on. You will find that any single book that you read that deals with Indian history, there are distortions. Even the best meaning author, the author who loved India, even that author's book, you will find distortions in that book. R.C. Majumdar was a firm believer in the Aryan invasion theory. Well, he lived 100 years ago, died roughly 100 years ago. I'm not sure when he died, but the books were written a long time ago, decades ago, almost 100 years ago. So those books are going to be outdated in a lot of ways. But even if you take books written more recently, most of these books are going to say that the so-called hypothetical Aryan invasion happened, that Indians are descendants of Aryans and Dravidians, which is utter nonsense. And other books will have other flaws. There is not a single book that I can think of that doesn't have all of these flaws and distortions to some level. And that's why I never recommend any book on Indian history. I think I have a video on this channel. If you go back to the oldest videos, I think there is a set of book recommendations, and in those books also you will find distortions. So how do you read history? Most of you, if you read, you will end up being misled and you will end up absorbing lies. And I'll tell you what, until 2015, 2016 or thereabouts, I was a firm believer in the Aryan invasion theory. So how did this change? It changed when, so I was on Twitter. Back in the days, it used to be called Twitter. And on Twitter, I used to tweet about history and stuff, okay, back in the day, 2016, 2017, around that time. And all the time, people used to tell me, please debunk the Aryan invasion theory. The Aryan invasion theory is a lie. And I used to get irritated with them. That this is a scientific fact. All the authors are in agreement. There was an Aryan invasion. So why can't you accept facts? Why do you have to push back against everything? It used to irritate me. Then for some reason, one day I said, okay, let me look into the actual facts. I'll not look at textbooks. I'll look at research papers. So I started looking at journal articles, scientific research papers in journals. Started reading one by one, going deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. And after spending like 100 hours or so in that, I was astonished, I was shocked, and I took a complete 180-degree turn. It became clear to me that the Aryan invasion theory is a lie. You see? So if you really want to understand history, that's the approach you would take. You do spend countless hours looking into original research, not opinions of authors that are available in textbooks. But most people can't do that. Most people don't even know how to read a research paper. So for the average person, the only recourse you have is, the best thing you can do is to spend a few hours and read a textbook or a history book. But that is going to have opinions of the person who wrote and it's going to have the known and unknown biases of the author who wrote the book. right? So that's why I prefer not to recommend authors and books. There is no book that is without distortions and biases. So how do I read it? I am aware of, first of all the lies and all the distortions that I'm aware of. I'm sure there must be more that I'm not aware of also. And I'm aware of the techniques that these people use to mislead the reader. So when I read a book, I know exactly whether the person is going to lie. And the moment I see it, I know, okay, there you have it. That's the lie. So there are sections, entire sections that are lies. There are sections that are distortions, subtle distortions, and so on. So I, over the years, have learned these techniques, and these techniques that people have of lying and misleading the audience. So if so I take a book, I know, okay, some parts are going to be lies, but some part is going to be of some interest to me, so I'll read that. That's how it is. That's how I read it. But it's not something everybody else can do, unfortunately. So I don't know what to say. If you really are interested in history, you have to actually find time to read research papers. And even in research papers, you will have distortions and lies. So they'll put one sentence, okay, and which will be an assumption without any basis, and then based on that sentence, they will build a whole edifice of lies around it. So the assumption they'll kind of make is that, we found so and so genetic lineage in so and so area, so it's associated with the origin of the Indo-Aryan languages. How is it associated? But they'll just put one sentence there, and if it is not challenged, then they can build a whole article around that based on that assumption. The truth is that there is no way to link DNA with a language, but they're gonna use that assumption. So even research papers are full of lies at times, many of them, especially the ones that deal with the Aryan invasion thing and all that. And that's just the way it is. So I cannot suggest authors, because if I suggest authors and you'll read them, and then you'll come back and point fingers at me that you suggested this author and that author has made this statement, and how dare you suggest this. I get a lot of that. That's why I don't recommend any authors. Samarth says Trump announced the F-47, linking it to 2 years of US tech development. Could this be tied to UFO sightings? Soon, China's J-35 sixth generation jet was spotted. Why is the US open? China stay quiet. No one's open. Everybody lies. Everybody hides things. This F-47 that's been announced recently, it's been flying for more than 5 years. Okay, that aircraft, that prototype, has been flying for more than 5 years. Maybe more. Maybe there are more prototypes. And maybe they've announced the F-47, but maybe there's an F-57 somewhere or F-67 somewhere. And those prototypes are also flying around, and they will not be announced in the next 20 years, perhaps. So there's a lot of experimental aircraft, developmental aircraft, prototypes that are always being tested at any given point in time, especially in a country like the US. And of course, people, if they cite that, they will believe it's a UFO, because it is not any known aircraft design that is known in the public domain, and it may have properties that are different from regular aircraft. So yeah, it certainly can be tied to UFO sightings. Now, the J-35 sixth generation jet was spotted. No, it was not spotted. The Chinese allowed it to be spotted. They announced the existence of this sixth generation jet. Right? So it was not an accidental spotting that somebody made a discovery of something that the Chinese have not announced. The Chinese announced it. The US, how do you know the US is open? I mean, the past 5 years, they could have announced the F-47. They did not, right? For 5 years, they were quiet. They were secretive about it. Now that it's officially in development, and they've chosen to announce it. But I assure you, there's a whole bunch of experimental aircraft that are being developed right now that they have not announced to you. So just because they announced one thing, how do you assume that they are open? How can you be so gullible? Please be a little more mature. Just because they announced one thing doesn't mean they are open. There's 99 other things they're not announcing to you. When they announced the existence of stealth aircraft during the Gulf War era, that stealth bomber of that time was flying for 20 years, but they had not announced it. They had kept it secret for like 20 years. They started developing stealth technology in the 1970s, but they did not announce it until the 1990s. So they keep a lot of stuff secret. They keep it secret for decades. Who says they are open? Just because they announce one thing doesn't mean they're open. It's just that they're doing it strategically to make it look like, to mislead people. Okay, I announced this. See, I'm open. What about the other 99 things you're not announcing? Shh, don't talk about that. That's the kind of thing they always do. Freedom, democracy, and human rights. They are the worst violators of freedom, democracy, and human rights. But through propaganda, they make it look like they are the world's leading power that supports democracy, freedom, and human rights. So it's not like that. Please be a little more mature than this. Come on. Everybody has things to hide, and you should. Okay. Sergeant Skylan says, do you think India's sovereignty has been compromised? Is China on the rise or decline? Do I think India's sovereignty has been compromised? We are not a technologically sovereign nation. Please understand that. Technologically, look, we are talking right now. I am communicating with you all, taking your questions right now in real time, right? Am I doing this because of Indian technology? I'm not, right? I'm using an American platform to do this. If this platform and all these platforms disappear, we Indians will have no way to communicate with each other. Social media, you know what it's done? It has given the average Indian person a voice for the first time in 1,000 years. And we are all able to communicate with each other in real time, all of us, wherever we are in India and in the world, because of these platforms, these social media platforms. All of these platforms are American platforms. If these platforms disappear, we will have no idea, no way of staying in touch with each other. Right? So do you think we are technologically sovereign? We're not. Technologically, we are not a sovereign nation. And I think the government of India should do this on a war footing, to have our own platforms as a backup at least, so that in case the Western platforms disappear for whatever reason, we Indians can stay in touch with each other. I think it's important for us as a nation to remain in touch with each other no matter what happens, to be able to communicate with each other in real time. It's happened only because of the West. It's not happened because of India. It's not happened because of Indian companies or Indian government. So India is not a technologically sovereign nation. Not at all. And that is an area of great concern. It doesn't seem to be something that is high on our list of priorities. The fact that we are technologically not sovereign. Are we territorially sovereign? Yeah, we are territorially sovereign, more or less. Some parts of our territory are in foreign control. Obviously, we know that. POK, Gilgit-Baltistan, Aksai Chin, and so on. Yeah, that's an issue, certainly. There is the issue of Manipur. A whole few 100,000 foreigners are squatting on Indian territory in Manipur and oppressing the natives. That's an issue. So there are some gray areas which are of great concern. There is the fact that there's 100 million Bangladeshis on Indian territory. That's an area of great concern, and that doesn't seem to be once again on a very high on the list of priorities, that we need to get rid of them as soon as possible. So yeah, there are definitely issues, but overall, if you look at the big picture, macro perspective, 10,000 meter level, India is one of the 4 sovereign nations overall. But yes, you raise good questions. You raise good questions here, and there are certainly areas of concern. Is China on the rise or decline? Technologically, China is on the rise. Technologically, China is the only nation that can compete with the US almost neck to neck. So that way, China is on the rise. China has no real threat apart from the US and perhaps to some extent Russia. India is not really a threat for China. India can defend itself, but India is not a threat for China. China is not afraid that India will tomorrow, suddenly march upon Chinese territory and take away Tibet or whatever. That's not a fear the Chinese have. It's not a realistic fear. So China only has the US as a threat. and to some extent perhaps Russia, but they are managing Russia right now. So technologically, they are very much on the rise. Demographically, they are in decline right now, and that's a big issue for area of concern for them, because by 2100, their population will be about half of what it is today, and the population will be the average age will be about in the 60s, which is an area of great concern. But they're hoping that they can use AI and robotics to offset that issue and so on. We'll see about that. But a nation has to be young in order to be vigorous and energetic. Your population ideally should be in its 20s or 30s. The average age, the median age of a population should ideally be in the early 30s or late 20s. That's ideally what you want. In India, it's about 33, 34, which is an area of concern. In China, it's already higher than that. So there are issues in China. There's a demographic collapse that's impending, which is not an urgent issue, but a very big issue long term. But technologically, it's on the rise. Militarily, it's untested. The last military engagement of any kind they had, serious engagement, was in 1979 when they had a war with Vietnam, which they lost. But that's in 79. Today is 2025, a long time ago. And there was another clash in 1987 between India and China, which India won, but it was a very minor thing compared to the war that China had with Vietnam. They tried to invade Vietnam. So China's military is untested, but their military is very powerful, at least on paper. Their navy is very powerful, at least on paper. Numerically, it's the largest navy in the world. What is the real measure of a navy's power? It's not how many ships you deploy at sea. The only measure of a navy's firepower or lethality is how many missiles you can deploy at sea at any given point in time. Let's say I have a navy that can deploy 100 ships today, right now, and each ship has one missile. So my lethality is 100 missiles. Let's say your navy has 20 ships and each ship has 5 missiles. So you also are deploying 100 missiles. So your 20 ships are equal to my 100 ships, because you have 100 missiles that you deploy and I have 100 missiles that you deploy. If the Chinese can deploy 200 ships and each ship has 30 missiles, 200, that's about 6,000 missiles they're deploying. That's a whole different scale of firepower. So the only measure of a navy's strength is how many missiles they are able to deploy at any given point in time on average. And the Chinese, I think, are quite up there with the Americans, maybe even higher than the Americans. And the question is, how many can we deploy? How many missiles are we deploying on a routine basis at sea? Our best destroyers have about 32 or 36 missiles, I think. Or 32 perhaps, those VLS tubes and all that. I think it's a big area of concern. We need to have higher missile deployment per ship. Not sure what the thought process is, but yeah, there are concerns. Anyhow, that's the answer to your question. Okay, let's see some more questions. Anonymous Scientist says, have you watched Lex Fridman's podcast with Mr. Modi? What are your views? Why did Trump share that podcast? I haven't seen the podcast. I don't watch podcasts. I don't have the time for that. And I know Mr. Modi's views, and yeah, I haven't watched it. I haven't even watched maybe 30-second clip here and there or something. So I haven't watched it. I don't have any views about it. Why did Trump share the podcast? Because Mr. Modi must have said nice things about Mr. Trump. That's what I would say. Yeah. Raghav Arora says, for Bharat to become a real hard power, what does it need to do? Is there any other missile technology or more power, that nuclear missiles that can be developed to challenge the world? Finger red number 1. Okay. For Bharat to become a hard power, what does it need to do? There are internal issues it needs to address and external issues it needs to address. The biggest issues are internal. For Bharat to become a real hard power, it has to become a more efficient power internally, which means all the red tape, all the bloat, all the inertia needs to be cut out. There's this, the government is like an employment generation scheme for bureaucrats. And bureaucrats, they are once you become a bureaucrat, you have a job for life, no matter what you do, whether you perform, you don't perform. And that's a very big issue. We need to have a much leaner, meaner, and more efficient bureaucracy, first of all. There is a tremendous amount of alleged corruption in India. It is alleged that India operates, the governance system allegedly entirely operates allegedly on corruption, allegedly. Okay, it is alleged that way. So that needs to be cut out. Every institution is allegedly, issues. There are issues within it. I think the biggest issue within India, allegedly, is alleged corruption. Okay, I think that's the number one issue in India. And if you cut out even 50% of that, India will become a different kind of beast. So that's the number one thing India needs to address: the alleged corruption that is all over the alleged place, allegedly. Secondly, what does India need to do? India needs to change its system of governance, or its system of democracy. We need to have presidential system. End of story. This parliamentary democracy came out of a small island in the Atlantic Ocean called England. It's suitable for a small island country. It's not suitable for a gigantic subcontinent-sized nation. We need to have a presidential system. End of story. Parliamentary democracy, Westminster-style democracy, is not working for India. We need a presidential system, which is an interim step towards something else. And then we need to end all these reservations and all based on caste. Enough of reservations based on caste. If you want reservations, fine. Give reservations to people based on their financial condition, not based on caste. And reservations should be only up to standard 12 or college or whatever. You cannot have reservations in jobs and reservations in everything. There needs to be merit in the country. Without meritocracy, a country cannot, there's no chance it will do well in the long term. And then what do we need to do to be a hard power? India should focus on the Navy. India has historically been a maritime power, historically. And today we are blindly aping other countries. We need to become a maritime power. We have this God-gifted position, geographical position that every other power envies. Look at the map. Look at the map. Look at where we are sitting. We dominate the Indian Ocean region. We are in a position to dominate the whole area and elbow everybody else out if we want. But to do that, we need a massive navy, and not those goddamned aircraft carriers. I know these are prestigious, gigantic ships, but we don't need those. We need sharks, not elephants. We need a large number of submarines, maybe 100 submarines of various kinds. And we need maybe 300 surface vessels on top of having 100 submarines. That's what we need. We need to have a constant Indian presence all across the Indian Ocean region. Enough of these slogans which say that the Indian Ocean is our strategic backyard. A slogan is not going to make you a power. You need to have a visible presence wherever you go in the Indian Ocean. Right now, if you're a French ship or an American ship or any ship traveling the Indian Ocean, do you see any Indian presence anywhere? You don't. So if you want to become a hard power, you need to have that. We need to have a clear focus on Navy. We need to have at least 100 submarines of various kinds. Enough of this goddamned aircraft carriers. Okay? And we need to focus on distributed lethality. I am perfectly okay with smaller ships. The deadliest ship, one of the deadliest kind of ships is actually a boat, missile boat. A missile boat is a small vessel on which you can have 3 missiles at a time. And that little ship, which may cost maybe $10 million, can destroy ships costing hundreds of millions of dollars. So we need to think in that manner. We need an agile navy. We need an unconventional navy. And, we can do a lot with less money if you want. So we need to do that. We need to become... So there's the naval aspect. We need to obviously have our own jet engines. We need to have drone technology. We need to really have much more military muscle to flex than we have right now. And we need to become a technological powerhouse. Right now, we are a second-rate technological power. Technologically, we are not even sovereign when it comes to social media and all that. And technologically, we are always trying to do what others have done 20, 30 years ago. That's what DRDO, etc. does, except for missiles. It's only in missile technology that we are a world leader. India has the best missile systems in the world right now. I'm sure we have ICBMs that can reach anywhere in the world. We don't talk about that. So in missiles, we are the best, but we need to be the best in everything else as well. So there's a lot we can do. So that's what we have to focus on. Right. Crazy Brain says, "What's up with our neighbors?" Well, which neighbors are you referring to? There's a lot of neighbors that we have. Let's take a look at the map, and we'll talk about some of our neighbors. How about we do that? Yeah. What's up with our neighbors? So the first neighbor everybody thinks of when we talk about our neighbors is Pakistan, West Pakistan. So what's happening in West Pakistan? Things are never well in West Pakistan. West Pakistan is always on the brink of collapse. But because of money that flows in from the US right now, West Pakistan will continue to exist as long as the Americans find it useful for West Pakistan to exist. So things are not well there. There's obviously issues. Balochistan is a big issue. There's a lot of unrest in Balochistan. The Pakistani military is facing setback after setback in Balochistan. That's an issue. When it comes to the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region, once again, it's not really Pakistani sovereign territory. The Taliban rules there, right? That's an issue for Pakistan, for West Pakistan, and so on. So West Pakistan is a nation that's always like one foot in the grave, always on the brink of bankruptcy. It's an almost failed state, but not quite because of Western support. That's the deal with West Pakistan. Afghanistan is doing okay. It is ruled by the Taliban. The Taliban is to some extent a US proxy, to some extent. They have an understanding with the US, the Doha Agreement, which had secret clauses, which we are not aware of. But it is alleged by very reputable sources that the Taliban government is paid a weekly stipend of between $50 to $100 million in cash by the Americans. That's to keep their end of the bargain. So what the Taliban do is they keep China out of the region essentially. That's essentially what it is. So what is it? The One Belt One Road Initiative, Belt and Road Initiative. That thing that is not going through Afghanistan. That's what the Chinese wanted. So Afghanistan is kind of doing okay. The other nations, Tajikistan. I don't think Indians even regard Tajikistan as a neighbor. It's right next door. It's right next door, but Indians don't even know about Tajikistan. Tajikistan is doing okay. Nothing special happening there. There is that. Then the other neighbors, Tibet, China, well, pretty stable. No big issues there. Nepal, there seems to be a groundswell of support for the Nepalese monarchy, for the deposed king, Shri Gyanendra Ji. So we'll see what happens about that. People are sick and tired of the corrupt politicians, the Nepalese politicians, and they would like to see a return of the king and a return of the Nepalese monarchy. There's more and more support for that. So we'll see about that. Bhutan, I will not speak about it right now. We'll see about that. East Pakistan or Bangladesh is not doing well. The nation is currently run by the military. They have a puppet at the top called Mohammed Yunus, the great Nobel laureate, who is a US proxy. And East Pakistan is also a US asset now. Sri Lanka is doing okay. Maldives are doing okay. Indonesia is fine. Indonesia and India's relations are good. Most Indians don't even think of Indonesia as our neighbor. Well, here's some news for you. The distance between Indonesia and India is about 200 kilometers at most. It's just 200 kilometers away from India. And yet Indians don't think of Indonesia as a neighbor. So weird. Another neighbor is Thailand. Okay, if you look at the distance from India to Thailand, it's about, let's say, 500 kilometers. Okay, so even Thailand is a neighbor that we are not aware of. And Thailand is also doing okay. The area of concern is Myanmar, Burma, where there's a civil war that's raging. And there is this big issue, Project K, Cookie Land for Christ, that the Americans had unleashed, and it's still going on. And millions, not millions, but hundreds of thousands of these cookie infiltrators have entered Manipur, and that is a big issue for India. So yeah, there are parts of Manipur that are under foreign control right now. Yeah, and there are lots of issues over there which I will not go into detail. But yeah, so overall, that's the situation in the subcontinent, extended subcontinent region. If we talk about Iran, well, Iran etc. is also there's a whole other set of issues when it comes to the West Asia region. Iran is kind of between the subcontinent and West Asia, uh, historically, culturally part of the subcontinent extended region, but geographically now it's right now it's seen as part of West Asia and so on. So yeah, that's what's the deal with our neighbors right now. All right. Um, Prashant says, "What are your views on Savarkar's atheism, and why do Indian people have a stereotype that a non-believer can't respect his Bhartiya culture, aka sanatanism?" Look, I don't know much about Mr. Savarkar. There are many historical figures that I have not studied and I am not aware of. Like, for example, Dr. Ambedkar. I have not studied Dr. Ambedkar at all. I haven't read any of his books, any of his writings. I haven't read any book about him. I have no idea about Mr. Ambedkar, Dr. Ambedkar. Similarly, when it comes to Mr. Savarkar, I haven't read anything about him. I obviously have heard about him. I'm aware of the general context and his relevance in Indian history and so on, but I don't know much in detail. I know that he's one of the freedom fighters who should get a great deal more credit than what he's given. And a lot of people hate him, right? And the people who generally hate him are the people who are typically the lefties and stuff, right? So yeah, obviously I'm aware of that. What are my views about Savarkar's atheism? I don't care about his atheism. Okay, so I've heard that he was an atheist. So what? You can be an atheist and a Hindu at the same time. You can be, of course. You don't have to believe in God to love your culture and civilization, right? Look, even if you take the religious, the divine aspect out of what we call Sanatan Dharma, religion, let's take the divine aspect out of it, because let's say you don't believe in God, but you still, if you even if you take the divine aspect out of Sanatan Dharma, you have the values and morality which make a lot of sense even if you're an atheist. And it's the best system of morality and values in the world, right? So you can be an atheist and still love your culture and love your civilization. So, and when it comes to Hindu Dharma and the various philosophical schools of thought, I have a video on that. Very brief video, 5 minutes long. If you look at the philosophical schools of thought, there are atheistic schools of thought in Sanatan Dharma. I mean, both the school of thought, both the Dharma, it's part of the Dharmic umbrella, and it's kind of atheistic. Kind of, they don't believe in God. Some say that there is no belief in the soul either, which is a point of contention. If you look at Jaina, well, there is no divinity in Jaina Dharma either. There's no God in Jaina Dharma, but there is the existence of the soul, Atma. When you look at the Charvaka school of thought, it's a purely materialistic school of thought, completely atheistic, and yet it's part of Sanatana Dharma, right? So you can very much be an atheist and be a dharmic person. So it makes no difference to me whether Mr. Savarkar was an atheist or a theist. It makes no difference to me whatsoever. He fought for our civilization, our culture, our nation, and that's all that I care about. So that's why I have the greatest of respect for him. And obviously, he suffered a lot for his beliefs and for the cause that he fought for. So respect for that. What else? Okay. Kshatriya Rising says, what are your thoughts on the Balochistan movement? Since Pakistan army usually are US leaning, do you think the Balochistan movement will break up Pakistan, or is this for deep state to put pressure on the Pakistan government? Okay, let's look at the Balochistan issue from a geographical perspective. Okay, let's look at the map. Here we have the map. So now Balochistan. What is Balochistan? If you think of Balochistan today, if most Indians think of Balochistan, they'll think of the western part of Pakistan. The capital of Balochistan is said to be Quetta. Okay, it's the major city. So it's probably the largest province in Pakistan. Balochistan, Pakistan. So it won't give you, Google Maps will not show you a geographical delimitation of Balochistan, but it's this region overall. But the actual Balochistan, historical Balochistan, half of it is in Iran today. You see, Chabahar, if you zoom in here, Chabahar is a port in the Iranian part of Balochistan. I would even say that places like Zahedan are part of Iran and Balochistan. See, Sistan and Balochistan province. And I would say even probably, no, okay, Bandar Abbas is part of Hormozgan province. Minab, etc. Jiroft is Kerman province, and so on. Zahedan is definitely Sistan, Balochistan. Iran Shahar is Sistan, Balochistan. So the point is, about half of historical Balochistan is currently in Iran. Okay. So now, if you want India to support the Balochistan freedom movement, this complicates things. The fact that half of Balochistan is in Iran. If you say that I want Balochistan to be independent, it's gonna raise concerns in Iran because they have half of Balochistan, and the people in Iran and Balochistan are also Balochi people. They're not Persians. Okay, they are more Indian than Persian. Of course, Persians and Indians are also a long story. Anyway, so that is one thing that complicates the matters if we want to support the Balochistan independence movement. So then you have to explicitly say the state that I am talking about, Pakistani Balochistan, or the region of Kalat. So historically there was a state called Kalat. There was a Khan of Kalat, and in 47 or something, the Khan of Kalat had signed the instrument of accession to India. He wanted Kalat to be a part of India, and he sent the instrument of accession signed to Shri Jawaharlal Nehruji, who rejected it. Because Shri Nehruji did not want India to be a larger and more powerful country. He was a magnificent man, definitely way more intelligent than us, so we can't understand what he's doing, the depths of his intellect. There must be good reasons for whatever he did, I'm not sure. So the point is this. If you want to support the Balochistan independence movement, you have to say that it's only the Pakistani Balochistan or the Kalat region whose independence we are supporting. Now, Pakistan army, obviously it's US funded, so obviously they we know that the Pakistan army is US funded. Pakistan is a US vassal state after 2022, when there was a coup that ousted Imran Khan. So will the Balochistan independence movement break up Pakistan? No, it won't. Not at this point in time. Right now, the Pakistani military is too powerful, and the Balochi, the freedom fighters, don't have sufficient resources to defeat the Pakistani military. It's like Ukraine. Let's compare this with the Ukraine situation. See, Ukraine. What are the options Ukraine has right now in the war? Russia started the military operation in 2022 February, right? February 2022. Today is what is it? March 2025. It's been 3 years plus. What options does Ukraine have for ending the war? Option 1: defeat Russia thoroughly. Complete military defeat from Russia. Then the war ends. Or you agree to a ceasefire on Russian terms. The third option is you keep the war going for another 3 years and Ukraine gets completely destroyed as a consequence. The best solution is either to defeat Russia if you can, or accept ceasefire on Russian terms. They can't defeat Russia, so you accept a ceasefire. Similarly, right now, if you look at the Balochistan situation, the Balochistan Liberation Army isn't powerful enough to defeat the Pakistani military right now. And a ceasefire is not then it doesn't work for them, because they are under military occupation for the past 70 plus years. So they'll keep on fighting this insurgency. And that's the situation. So it's going to keep the pressure on Pakistan going on. And is this the deep state that's behind this? Well, I don't know. I don't know who's behind this. I'm sure the Balochi independence movement has multiple supporters from perhaps outside. I can assure you that India is not behind this. India doesn't participate in any such activities. India itself has suffered from a lot of non-state actor activities in the past, coming across the border from Pakistan and so on. So we don't do these things, okay? But I'm sure there are many supporters, non-state supporters of Balochistan. So I think it is going to go on. I don't think Pakistan will break up anytime very soon. Right? All right. Shri Balram Putin ji says, do you have nice words for the UK and England? What do I think about the UK and England? They had beautiful culture. The original culture of the UK and England, the original Celtic culture was beautiful. It was a polytheistic culture. It's the pre-Christian culture. Beautiful. Even the Anglo-Saxon culture, the pre-Christian culture was beautiful. But the Celtic culture was even better. The music, if you listen to Celtic music, for example, folk music, which has Celtic origin in the UK and England, that originates in the UK, England, that region, even Scottish Irish music, it's incredibly beautiful. They have something called the Celtic harp, the harp overall, and so on. And um, what's the guy's name? I forget the musician's name. There are many musicians who have explored Celtic, fusing Celtic music with other kinds of music. For example, Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin, most people think of Led Zeppelin as a hard rock band, but Led Zeppelin, at least 40% of the music is acoustic, non-electric. Okay, and a lot of the music is folk music. And it's not very well known that Led Zeppelin came to India, Mumbai, Bombay, it was then called, in the 1970s, and recorded a whole session album with local musicians. And if you listen to the bootleg recordings, you can see it's so natural to that these two styles of music fuse together so naturally. And the folk influences in Led Zeppelin's music are Celtic folk influences. Um, Davy Graham was a musician. I think he has passed away, but in the 60s, 50s, and 60s, he started experimenting, fusing Celtic music with Indian music, and he found that it's just a natural combination that just works naturally well together. Indian instruments like the tabla, sitar, etc., and Celtic music just naturally work together. So there is a very ancient connection between the cultures of India and the Celtic culture of Ireland, Scotland, and the pre-Christian England. And so their culture used to be beautiful. Now it's been destroyed, first of all, by the Anglo-Saxons. The Anglo-Saxons, well, it's just invasions happen. But yeah, the polytheistic culture was beautiful, which was destroyed by the Christians, and that's sad. Some of it still exists. It's a subsurface current kind of thing. So yeah, their music is beautiful. Okay, and what else can I say? Nice things about England, UK. I'm pretty fond of Scotland, Ireland. Very nice people, nice landscape. You can have 4 seasons in one day, and I would say it's a great place to visit. There's a lot of natural beauty there. Very nice culture. I like the languages, the Scottish Gaelic, Scottish language, the Irish Gaelic language, and so on. Even the Welsh language. There's a lot of languages in there that have all been suppressed by the English language. The English are a very hegemonic people, and they've done a lot of harm to the local cultures, actually. So there's a lot of good in England too. Of course, England has been a force of great destruction for us here in India and so on. And today, one kind of feels that they are reaping the fruits of what they sowed here, because today there's a whole immigration issue in England. They have selectively brought in certain kinds of immigrants from the subcontinent, not Indians, but the Pakistani flavor of immigrants, Pakistani Bangladeshis, and they are now creating havoc in England. So yeah, it's sad. It kind of makes me sad at a certain level to see that. But you reap what you sow, I would say. Okay, so yeah. Okay, Brijesh SK says recently there was a parents teacher meeting. Okay, good. And a lecturer told students that you should not make money before you get graduated or you get a degree. Why? Why should you not make money? You should start making money at the earliest in your life. If you can start making money by the time you're 13, do it. You can do some part-time work, or why shouldn't you make money? And what's the point of these degrees? What you need is skills. But the education system is such that without a piece of paper that says that you have got this degree, you will not get a job, and so on. The whole system is rotten and corrupt, and these teachers, these people, they are the real stakeholders of the system. They are the ones who benefit the most. And if you start making money before you get a degree, then you will say to yourself, why do I need the degree? I'm already making good money. So they want you to be in a situation where you have to depend on these degrees. And without these pieces of paper that these people have the power to withhold from you, without these pieces of paper, then you have no future. Because if you have money, then you have freedom, right? And if you are making money by the time you're 16, 17, 18, then you are free already. And you have options, and they don't need a degree. So these teachers, they are not your gurus. They are service providers. They don't deserve the respect that a genuine guru deserves to have. These people are service providers. They will stop teaching you the moment you stop paying them their monthly fees or whatever. And it is in their interest for you to have less options. And it is these degrees, these pieces of paper that they have the power to give to you or withhold from you, that's a form of blackmail they have over you. So that's why they will want you to believe that until you get the degree, you should not make any money. I will tell you the opposite. If you are 13 years old, if you're 14, 15, 16, whatever age you are, yeah, sure, study for your degree. I think it's a waste of time, but okay, study for your degree. But start exploring ways of making money on your own without having a job. Today, you can make money from your home. If you're computer literate, if you have other kinds of skills, you can start making money from your home without having a job, a fixed job. You can do that. There are so many ways of doing it. So I think if you are a youngster, you should start exploring these things. And the ideal situation is that by the time you're 18, you should have a salary of your own, maybe ideally a few lakh of rupees a month, at least a few 10, 20,000 rupees a month. And then you will realize that once you have that, the purpose of life is to have freedom. It's to have skills that benefit society, to make money from those skills, and that money gives you freedom to do whatever you want. And as long as you're contributing to society and you have a good place in society, you're respected and you respect everybody else, you're going to be reasonably happy in life. And that's the whole purpose of existing for most people, isn't it? And these degrees used to be a pathway towards that. That the degree says that you have spent your time and paid your dues, and you are a reasonably well qualified person, and then that's so that companies can hire you. But today, you don't really need that. So my point is, don't listen to these teachers. They are talking. They are saying this because it benefits them, not because it benefits you. You should make money at the earliest. You should start making money at the earliest. You should learn at the earliest age how to make money, different ways of making money, all legal and good ways of making money. But there are lots of good and legal ways of making money. And you don't need to be 18 or 24 or 25 to make money. You can start doing that at the age of 15 if you want. So do that. And once you do that, you will realize these degrees are worthless. All worthless. Okay, this is a interaction between people. Okay, that's fine. Let's see some other questions. Okay. GoDB says, can India stop concentrating on advanced fighter jets and focus on stealth missiles and drones to catch up and even dominate the domain? I think India should do multiple things in parallel. We have the resources and the money to work on multiple things at the same time. You don't have to just focus on one thing and stop focusing on everything else. It doesn't matter. So my point is, I understand what you're saying here and why you're saying this. Okay, first of all, yeah, fighter planes are kind of older technology. Today, if you have drones, then you can overwhelm the battlefield without the use of a fighter plane, right? Yes. And if you have long range missiles that are very hard to detect and very hard to take down, then once again, you don't need fighter planes. Yes, true, very true. So we need to focus on these technologies. Definitely we do. Yeah. Now, when it comes to missiles, we have some of the best missile systems, offensive and defensive, in the world. Yeah, we need better. We need to keep working on better missile systems. So let's say we have the Brahmos, which is a supersonic missile. 10 years ago, it was the best missile in the world. Today, not quite so. It's no longer the fastest missile or the deadliest missile in the world. It's still a very deadly missile, sure. But we need to have a hypersonic and a super hypersonic Brahmos. If you look at the Russian missiles like the Kinjal, the Tsirkon, etc., I think the Tsirkon is Mach 9 or Mach 10. That's ridiculously fast. Brahmos is Mach 2. Come on, it's time to move on. So we need to keep on improving our missile systems, improving and increasing the deadliness, the lethality. Definitely, we need to concentrate on that. We need to definitely focus a lot on drones. Drones with drones you can overwhelm the battlefield without sending a single soldier, without needing uh, fighter planes or whatever. The thing about drones, please understand, drones don't have long legs thus far. I cannot send a swarm of 2,000 drones 2,000 kilometers away. I can send a swarm of 2,000 drones 100 kilometers away, maybe. But drones don't have those long legs to go 2,000, 3,000 kilometers away. I can't deploy them that far. To deploy them that far, I need to first go closer to the battlefield. Maybe I can take a ship or something there and then deploy the drones from there. So drones are very good technology, very useful, can be very deadly, but right now it has limitations, certain limitations. I'm sure the limitations will also be overcome eventually. But let's say you want to send an army of drones, a swarm of 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 drones 2,000 kilometers away. You're gonna have to go over other people's territory perhaps, and these drones aren't supersonic drones, and they could be intercepted as also. So there are issues, understand that. So drones can't solve every problem. Some problems, they can be solved with missiles. Some problems can be solved with drones. Some problems can be solved with fighter planes, and so on and so forth. Some problems need strategic bombers, and so on. So my point is, we need to have every single kind of technology. So we should not stop concentrating on advanced fighter jets. Absolutely not. We should develop better and better fighter planes. We should at the same time develop better and better missiles. And we should at the same time develop better and better drones. We should also at the same time develop better submarines, develop better underwater drones, develop better destroyers, and so on. Everything needs to be worked on simultaneously. You can't stop concentrating on one thing. One thing, I would say, don't even stop concentrating on aircraft carriers. We have, I don't know, two at least right now. So keep those two, so that the Navy knows how to operate aircraft carriers. And maybe 20, 30 years, in 20, 30 years time, we may be in a position with that we now need aircraft carriers. Right now, we should not build more, but maybe in 30 years, when we are a much larger power, more powerful nation, we may need a few. So at that time, if we already have the ongoing capability of using an aircraft carrier, then we can develop more. And we want to start training soldiers and sailors from scratch again. So you should not stop concentrating on anything. Not You can't just give up on a technology. Even if the technology is old, it still has some use. Understand that. All right. Okay. Yeah, please. Harsh says, what are your thoughts on Kalki Avatar? Some people say it's still time, other people, I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea on Kalki Avatar. Okay, so yeah, I'm the wrong person to ask questions about that. No idea whatsoever. Prakhar Gupta says thousands of pages of JFK killing files are released, and he talks about CIA role in assassination. Your views on the files? Uh, I haven't read a single one of the files. When you dump a few thousand pages of files, what you're doing is you're increasing the amount of noise. A lot of these files, you will see that there are redactions, black stripes across the text, which omits, which censors some of the text. And most of it is just procedural stuff. Most of it is just noise and random, non-important stuff. And I hear, look, there are various AI systems that have gone through all the files, And once again, there are no huge big revelations. What CIA role? If you after reading all the files, if you ask the question who killed JFK, you still don't have the answer. There are hints of the CIA's involvement. There are questions about where was George um, the George Bush senior at the time. He apparently doesn't remember where he was that day and so on. Which agencies were involved. We still have hints. We still don't know who was behind the killing. So my views are, what's my view on this? My view is that they're still hiding what really happened. Look, here's what we need to know. How many people were there who shot at JFK? The Warren Commission report, the official report until today, it says that JFK was shot from behind. Okay, from a building up there, maybe 9th, 10th, whatever floor, I don't remember right now, but from behind. So it means that the bullet came from behind and hit him from the back, in the back of the head. If you watch the Zapruder film, you will see that his head goes back like that. You can see it blows up from here, which means the shot was fired from above, from front, not from behind. So the Warren Commission is lying. The official statement, the official position of the government has been a lie for decades. It's clear as day. Watch the Zapruder film; it's available on YouTube. I'll not play it here right now, but it's clear that he was shot from the front. He was shot in the throat. First of all, he's grabbing his throat, and his wife is looking at what happened. And then, while she's looking at him, he's again shot in the front, in the forehead. His forehead blows up like that, and his head is it is jolted backwards. It's clear he was shot from the front. So at least 2 bullet wounds are there, minimum 2. So the question, first of all, is how many shooters were there. Second question is, what are the identities of the shooters? Clearly, that guy, I forget the name, not John Rubens. What, Ruby? Did I say something? Jack Ruby, right? Not Jack Ruby. Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald. It looks like he wasn't the guy. He, in his own words, was just a patsy. And he was shot by a guy called Jack Ruby. Ruby? Was it Ruby or was it something else? Ruby, let's say. And Ruby also dies later. So it all conveniently was wrapped up. The question is, who were the shooters, the actual shooters? And who were they working for? What was the chain of command? None of the questions are addressed. So what's the point of these thousands of pages of JFK killing files? It's JFK noise. It's noise around the issue. They haven't released the truth. So that's my view on it. It's they're making it look like they're making some progress and being more transparent, but actually they're doing nothing of the sort. There's no transparency whatsoever. Okay. All right. Let's see, what other questions do we have? Diddy's Didu say, if Bob Lazar's testimony is true, then how will anti-gravity, and look, I don't know about Bob Lazar. I don't know what his testimony. Does anti-gravity exist? Look, I have some kind of understanding of physics, okay? I have a little bit of understanding of physics. As far as I know, there is no anti-gravity, theory of anti-gravity. Yeah, you can theoretically have time travel. Theoretically, you can. Theoretically, you can have certain things like that, according to the Einstein equations of general relativity. But how will anti-gravity annihilate economy, trade, space, quantum technology, time, magic, war machines? Look, I first of all, I don't know what Lazar has said or what he has not said. I've not watched any of the interviews or read any of the stuff. Secondly, if he is claiming anti-gravity exists, show me evidence of it existing and show me the physics behind it. Show me the equations that tell you that anti-gravity exists. So yeah, I'm super skeptical, and I'm not sure if this is true. That's what I can say. Sorry, I'm not able to answer your question in a satisfactory way because the premise itself is unsatisfactory. The claim, not what you're saying, but the claim. Ananda Biswas says in the podcast with Lex Fridman, Prime Minister Modi said, without India, AI is incomplete. What do I make of that statement? I make nothing of the statement. How is AI? Look, first of all, I have not seen the interview. Secondly, I'm not sure what statement he has actually made. And what are my views on this? AI will exist with or without India. India is a late entrant in the field. I'm not sure if we have even started working on an AI system. I don't know of any private company that's working on AI. I think Mr. Sridhar Vembu of Zoho is working on AI. It may take time for that to fructify. I believe that the government of India said that we're going to have an LLM of our own by the end of the year. Big deal. Just because everybody has an LLM, we should also have an LLM. What's the point of that? What are we going to do with AI? So I don't know. See, first of all, I haven't seen the interview. Secondly, I'm not sure what statement was made. My point is AI is already here. India is way behind. India is always trying to catch up with what people have done in the past. So in lots of technologies, India is trying to do what people did 20, 30 years ago. And that seems to be the same situation in the case of AI. I hope that I'm wrong and the government of India actually does take a serious initiative and in the next 2-3 years makes India a leading nation in AI. So if we are serious, it can happen. If Mr. Modi is serious, if the government of India is serious, I'm sure we can catch up with the US and China in the next 2-3 years. It's going to be a hell of a lot of work to do. It's possible. But thus far, I only hear slogans and words. And I think everybody is tired of slogans. Okay, everyone's tired of slogans. I think the whole country is tired of slogans. There's been a lot of slogans. You know, make it happen and then we'll see. Make it happen and then we will see. That's what I can say. Do you think India is a failed state, is what Mr. Watson says? I don't think India is a failed state. No, it's not. It's not. Vansh Kumar Sharma says, please end those two repeated live streams. It's weird. Listen, sir, if you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. No one's forcing you to watch it, right? Is it creating a problem in your life in some way? I have 2 live streams going on loop, old episodes. If people want to watch, they can watch, because there are lots of questions that people ask that have been answered in the past. So, if you have some time, you have nothing to do, watch half an hour of an older live stream. It may help you in some way. If you don't want to watch it, sir, please don't watch it. It's not creating any problem in your life. If you feel it's weird, don't watch it. No one's forcing you to watch it. But why do you want me to end it? I'm going to start 2 more now. Come on, man. All right, let's see. What else do we have? Crazy Brain says, do you think monarchy is a better type of government, or which other form do you think is good for India or any other country? I think the best form of government is benevolent dictatorship. And that's what we always had in India. Who was Shri Ram, Lord Ram? Was he a democratically elected Prime Minister of India? No, he was a king, which is by definition an autocrat. By definition, a king or an emperor is a dictator who comes to power through nepotism and passes on power by nepotism. He is one of our civilizational all-time greats. He is an avatar of Vishnu. That's how great he was. Wasn't he a dictator? What about Sri Krishna, the king of Dwarka, at a certain point in time? Wasn't he a dictator? Of course, he also was the next avatar of Vishnu. Think about the golden ages of India, the Mauryan era. Who were the rulers of India at the time? They were all despots and dictators. Chandragupta Maurya came to power through a coup, a regime change operation, a revolution. He overthrew the established government, the Nanda dynasty, the Nanda Empire, and started the Mauryan Empire with the help of his mentor, Sri Vishnugupta Chanakya. He was a dictator. Ashoka Maurya, the most powerful of the Mauryan emperors, was a dictator, and he was a pretty, at times, pretty brutal, wasn't he, Ashok? But he was one of our greatest rulers of all time. And I thank the gods we had someone like Emperor Ashok. Who was Kanishka? A dictator, a military expansionist. who conquered territories all the way from the Caspian Sea to the Aral Sea, and Xinjiang, and Tibet, Central Asia, and also the subcontinent. One of the greatest rulers of all time, one of our greatest rulers of all time, who did more for our culture than almost anybody else that we can think of. Kanishka. What about the Gupta emperors? What about Samudragupta? His whole career was a military operation. His entire career as emperor was one extended military campaign. He was a dictator. Were the Chola emperors not dictators? I think monarchy is the right way to go. Have you seen any prime minister of India who is even 10% of any of these great emperors of ours? Can you think of any prime minister, democratically elected leader of India, who has even 10% of the greatness of any of the emperors that I mentioned? So clearly, an imperial system is what has always worked for India. We have the oldest history in the world, and it's always been that system that worked for us. We are currently going through a very bad experiment. Of course, every system has flaws, potential flaws. Democracy is mediocrity, ruled by the mediocre. In an imperial system, if you have a bad emperor, you're gonna be in trouble. If you have a bad dictator, you're gonna be in trouble. Yeah, but have we had bad emperors in the past? We can think of one cruel emperor, Ashok. But even though he was cruel, India at the time was at the height of its prosperity. He was cruel to people around him, those who opposed him. But for the country, for the subcontinent, for the civilization, he was one of the greatest of all time. Super beneficial. So, more pros than cons, way more pros than cons. So I think monarchy and an imperial system is better for India. Yeah. You may think I'm old fashioned and I'm not liberal enough or whatever. Listen, I'm super liberal. I'm more liberal than most liberals, actually. Okay. The good question by Neil. Yes. What are your thoughts on the new findings of the Giza pyramid theory? Massive structures beneath them going 2 kilometers deep. Yeah, that's all over social media these days. That a team of researchers using LIDAR technology have used LIDAR technology to virtually excavate the ground beneath the largest pyramid of Giza, the pyramid of King Khafre, I think, or whatever it's called, the largest one. There are 3 of them outside Cairo. And beneath this pyramid, apparently, there are these structures, like, tunnel-like structures with winding staircases, apparently, that go like hundreds of meters down. And at the base of these tunnel-like things, there are these cubical chambers that are also massive. So, according to these findings, it would appear that the Pyramid of Giza is merely the tip of the iceberg, and there's a whole structure beneath it. Now, first of all, this news has come out in the form of a press briefing or multiple press briefings. They still haven't released the research in the form of a peer-reviewed document or even a non-peer-reviewed research report, a scientific paper. So I would wait for this actual published report to come out, whether it's reviewed or not. I don't care. I want to see the published report in written form with all the details of what they have found, the dimensions of all the structures that they have allegedly discovered, and that's the first thing I would wait for at this point in time. Some questions already arise. For example, does LIDAR technology have the ability to go to penetrate deep below the soil, like hundreds of meters down? That's one question I have, and I'm not really sure about that. I'll have to do my own research about that. How deep down can LIDAR penetrate beneath the surface of the earth? I'm sure you can go tens of meters below the surface, maybe 10 meters, 20 meters. Can you go a kilometer down? Can LIDAR uncover structures that are a kilometer or 2 kilometers below the surface? That's a big question. And secondly, even if it can it give you very clear details of spirals and staircases and all that, that sort of thing? How much detail can it uncover hundreds of meters down, if it can penetrate hundreds of meters down? So there are big questions that arise right now. I am going to adopt a skeptical approach until the findings are put out in the form of a published paper. Then I'll read the paper, and then I'll see if it addresses the questions that I just raised, and we'll have to see. But the proof of the pudding is the eating. So if these structures exist, then eventually there's gonna have to be an archaeological excavation deep below the surface of the pyramid. So let's go to the map and let's pull out the pyramids, and let me tell you what should actually happen if you want to prove or disprove what is being claimed right now. So let's go there. Where's the map? Here's the map. Let's go to Giza. So let me very rapidly find the location of the pyramids. So we go to Cairo, Al-Qaira. All right. And outside of Cairo, we have Giza. So we have these three pyramids over here. The Great Pyramid of Giza, and there's two more. There's Khafre, there's Menkaure, and the Great Pyramid of Giza. So let's assume that this is the pyramid under which you have those structures. So what you would want to do is you start excavating somewhere outside. You go down, let's say, a couple of 100 meters, and then so what you do is you first go down a couple of 100 meters, and then you go in the direction of those structures, and then you try to hit one of the structures through the excavation. Create a tunnel, and then you take the tunnel and you uncover one of the structures and try to enter it and see if there's an actual spiral thing that goes all the way down. So that will prove or disprove what actually is going on. That is what should happen eventually. So right now it's very early days in this entire matter. My natural reaction to these things is to adopt to be skeptical initially. And once the report is published, study it properly, and then let's see what actually comes out of it. We'll see. So right now I am skeptical, but it's still exciting for sure. All right. Can I do yodeling? How do you learn it? I can't do yodeling. I think it's what the Swiss do in the mountains, right? Yodeling or something. I don't know how to learn it. I'm sure you can look it up online. I don't know much about yodeling. Okay, Adi says I messed up my JEE, scored 68% in the 12th. Can I still be a good engineer? I'm passionate about manufacturing and defense. I will end up in a low-tier college, and I have an interest in mechanical engineering. Okay, so you did not get the kind of marks that you wanted in the 12th. Happens. It's not the end of the world. You can still be a good engineer. Look, your performance in an exam is not an indicator of the quality of an engineer you can be. Exam performance is not an indicator of how good you can be, how good an engineer or whatever you can be. So you still can be a good engineer. Okay, let's say you end up in what you call a low tier college. Doesn't matter. Do well in the college, get high marks in that, and there's a lot of opportunities open for you in the future. So I would say that don't be discouraged. Sure, you may not get into the IIT or some high tier college, like you say. It doesn't matter. Do well in your whatever college you get admission in. The point is, see, when it comes to exams and marks and all, you should try and get decent marks. Don't try and get the highest possible marks. It's a waste of time. In the long run, at least in your 20s, people are going to look at, prospective employers will look at your marks, at least when you're in your 20s. So it's okay if you did not do well in the 12th or in your GE, but as long as you get decent marks in college, it won't really matter. So the trick is to have good marks, but not great marks. If you have great marks, like 99% marks, it's not going to give you a huge advantage over people who have like 85% marks. But if you have like 50% marks, then it's going to be a red flag over you. So make sure you don't get 50% marks. Get decent marks, but don't waste your time trying to be the top kid in class. Use that time to actually acquire some skills and all that. So my point is, don't be discouraged. Go to college, do reasonably well in college, get good marks. Don't waste your time trying to get the best possible marks, and learn skills. And those skills are going to be what's going to be valuable for you uh, in your in your quest to be a mechanical engineer. So do well in that. All the best, and please be optimistic, and make sure you get good marks in the future. No need to get great marks, but get good marks. Right. Mateo Perez says, mechanical engineer here, just dedicate yourself and study critically. Passion and effort is more important than high grades. You have to be you have to have a mix of practicality and passion. So to be, from the practical perspective, you need good grades. You don't need great grades. You need good grades, because if you get low grades like 50% or something, then it's going to be a red flag, and many employers will probably pass you over for somebody else. So get good grades. And yes, I totally agree that dedicate yourself and study critically. If you are passionate about mechanical engineering or whatever subject, spend a lot of time studying it. Master the field, acquire the skills, study critically. Don't memorize. Actually understand the whatever you're studying. And you have to put in the effort if you're passionate about it. And you also have to be passionate about the right things. So mechanical engineering is a good field to be passionate about, for sure. Right? So get good grades. You don't need exceptionally high grades, but make sure you don't get bad grades. That's all. Mahi Shrestha says, how did Native Americans arrive in America? What's their ancestry? Look, there's multiple theories about that. Okay, how did Native Americans arrive in America? For the longest time, there was this theory that 13,000 years ago, the Native Americans arrived in America from the Bering Strait. So let's go to the map and let me show you what I'm talking about. Where's the map? So we have just come out of an ice age. The last ice age ended about roughly 11,000 years ago. Okay, and then the world started getting warmer. But if you the pinnacle of the last ice age was about 13,000 years ago, and it started about 20,000 or so years ago. So 20,000 to 10,000 years before today, the world was a very different place. It was much colder. The sea levels were much lower than what they are today. And for example, Sri Lanka was connected to the Indian subcontinent. It was part of the subcontinent. It was not a separate island. All this entire region was also connected to Asia. The Indonesia region, Philippines region, all of that. Because it was a much colder world, there was much more ice in the world, which means the ocean levels were much lower. And at that time, about 13,000 years ago, this region was frozen over. So the Bering Strait was frozen over, and this region also was frozen over, which means there was a land connection between easternmost Asia and Alaska. Right? And that's why it is believed that people from Eastern Asia, the Siberian people, they were able to just walk into Alaska. And then over time, they started migrating southwards as the ice started melting over time. And eventually they ended up all the way down south through the southernmost extremities of South America. So it was believed for the longest time that this first influx of people into the Americas happened 13,000 or so years ago. And there are some archaeological discoveries that kind of bolstered this theory. But now we have discovered new archaeological sites in southern Chile, etc., that also date from 13,000 years ago, which completely destroys this theory that humans entered the Americas only 13,000 years ago. So now it's believed maybe it happened 20,000 years ago, maybe 30,000 years ago. We're not quite sure. It's still a work in progress. Now, what's the ancestry of the Native Americans? The ancestry is probably Eastern Asian, or more specifically, Siberian people. The closest relatives of the Native Americans are the people who are called the Siberian peoples, who live in Siberia, uh, the easternmost the northeast part of Asia, very cold region, Sakhalin, Kamchatka, Siberia, all of that region. So there's a significant genetic similarities between the Native Americans and the Siberian people. Yeah. Okay. What other questions do we have? Himang says, if time is linear and everything in the universe is predetermined, can free will truly exist? Uh, how do we know everything in the universe is predetermined? Do we have evidence of that? There is one physics theory called superdeterminism that says that, yeah, perhaps everything is predetermined. And what is the origin of the theory? We know that the best theory of the origin of the universe that we inhabit is what is colloquially called the Big Bang theory, right? That everything that the universe expanded out of a single super dense point about 13.8 billion years ago, a super luminal expansion initially, and that's what gave rise to the universe. So it was not an explosion, it was an expansion of space and time and everything within it. That's called the Big Bang theory. So if that theory is true, which it most likely is, that's the best theory we have, a part of the lambda CDM model of cosmology, then what we have is that so every single particle that exists in the universe, its origin can be traced back to the Big Bang, to the moment when the universe started expanding out of a single point, more or less a single point. And so everything can be uh, so the evolution of every particle of matter and every piece of energy, let's say, can be determined using differential equations. And of course, there's going to be some randomness in it because of the inherent random nature, statistical, stochastic nature of quantum mechanics. But that randomness is genuinely random. It's not predetermined. So in that case, you're going to have some randomness uh, because of the nature of quantum mechanics. But apart from that, everything else is predetermined because of differential equations. Which, so if that is true, then free will cannot exist. Okay, so in that case, free will is an illusion. But yeah, so it's up. So from that theory's perspective, it may mean that free will is an illusion, but it goes against everything we believe in. And if you start believing that free will is an illusion and everything is just predetermined, then you kind of some people may give up on life. So my point is that we don't quite know which theory is true, which is not. We should not pretend to believe that our understanding of science is that we understand the universe very well. We understand the universe very, very poorly. We understand less than 5% of the universe, if at all. So we have a very rudimentary understanding of the universe. So our understanding may have a lot of flaws in it. So I would not say that it is a fact that the universe is predetermined and everything that happens is predetermined. So that's not an assumption we should make. Is time linear? We're not quite sure about that also. So if you start mixing philosophy and religion into science, then you will say that time is cyclical and all that stuff. Well, if you look at the way time has evolved on this, as far as we are concerned, from the beginning of the universe 13.8 billion years ago, time seems to have been fairly linear. Of course, we know that time evolves differently in different parts of the universe depending on how much matter exists, because the presence of mass slows time down, and the absence of mass, the rate at which clocks evolve is different. It's faster. So if you are sitting on the surface of the planet here, like the way I am, a clock that I'll watch or clock I'll wear will tick at a certain rate. But if I am 300 kilometers above the surface of the earth, that same watch will tick faster, very slightly faster. And if I am outside the solar system, it will tick even faster. So time itself flows at different rates in different parts of the universe. and that itself may be the reason why certain phenomena exist. So it's pretty complicated. Time is, well, from our perspective, linear, but it flows at different rates at different parts of the universe. And there is no guarantee that everything in the universe is predetermined. So I would say that it's okay to believe in free will, and it's okay to put in a lot of effort in life instead of just being a passive idle spectator rather than an active participant. Please be active participants in life, and please try to make a dent in the universe and try to shape the shape of the future instead of just being a supporting actor in the grand scheme of things. Be the main character, don't be a supporting actor, right? Okay. Sparkling Lotus says, so our calculations of the speed of light have got to be inaccurate. No, 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 it doesn't mean that. Where does it mean that? See, there are different ways of calculating the speed of light. I'll not go into that, but it doesn't mean it's inaccurate. It's actually an interesting question that you're asking, because see, time flows at different speeds, right? The clock will be slower on Earth as opposed to in space where there is no mass and all. So if you measure the speed of light in space, it may seem to be slightly different and all, but we have an overall understanding of what is the speed of light across the universe, and the speed of light, according to general relativity, is the same. So what happens to the speed of light? I'll explain. The presence of a massive object like the sun or a black hole doesn't slow light down. It doesn't slow the speed of light. It simply changes the trajectory of light. It bends space-time, so light travels in curved paths because of the presence of gravity. But it doesn't slow light down. The speed of light remains the same, whether it is in free space or whether it is near a massive object. So our calculations of the speed of light will never be inaccurate. Okay? So yeah, interesting question, and that's the answer. Okay, we are almost at the end of today's session. Let's take maybe a couple more questions. Amisha says, do you believe in multi-universe? I think it's possible that we may have a multiverse. Look, we have no way of looking beyond our universe. We can't even see the entirety of our universe. We probably can see only a small portion of our overall universe. The cosmic horizon is about 95 billion light years. That's how far we can see. And every day it's getting, more and more objects are moving beyond it because of the expansion of the universe. So we only are able to observe a small portion of our actual universe. The actual universe that we inhabit may be much larger, but I think it's quite possible that we may have a multiverse kind of scenario. Now that is pure speculation. That is not a scientific statement. It is probably a philosophical or spiritual statement I'm making. But I think it's possible that if you have a universe that we inhabit, there may be other universes also. And there are reasons why one can speculate that way. There are two scientific theories that give rise to the philosophical concept of the multiverse. One is the string theory landscape, which gives you the possibility of 10 raised to 500 possible different universes. Okay, that's a string theory landscape. And secondly, we have the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which also is taken quite seriously by many scientists, many physicists, and that also gives you a multiverse scenario. So there are scenarios in which a multiverse kind of in which multiple universes can exist, but there's no way of proving or disproving that. So even though it's a valid interpretation of quantum mechanics, it's a philosophical rather than a practical interpretation or a scientific interpretation of quantum mechanics. All right. Let's take one final question. Shadow says, do you listen to any Indian rapper? Do you listen to any Indian rapper? Do you listen to any Indian rapper? I think once you can ask. I don't listen to any Indian rappers. I am not a fan of rap music. I don't think it's music at all. And please don't be offended if you are a fan of rap music. You don't have to agree with everything I say, but I don't really enjoy it. Last question. Karan says, your ancestors were guardians of the Somnath Shivling. Yes, not guards, guardians. There's something called the Chavda dynasty. The Chavda dynasty ruled Gujarat, parts of Gujarat, between let's say the 7th and between the 8th and the 10th century AD. That was my family. My family is pretty large. Okay, so they were the rulers of Gujarat, and as such, it was their job to protect the Somnath Jyotirlinga. So they were the servants and guardians of the Somnath Shivling by being the rulers of Gujarat. So Somnath came under their protection. Somnath came under the protection of the Chavda kings of the time. Yeah, so they were the guardians of the Somnath Shivling. So I have a personal connection with the Somnath Shivling, indeed. All right, with that, we'll bring this session to an end. It's been way more than 2 hours. Very interesting, very enjoyable. Let me know in the comments whether you find this sort of session more interesting, in which I take questions from the live chat, or do you prefer sessions in which I take pre-chosen questions, questions I have looked through, the questions that I've selected from the comments? Do you prefer that sort of session, or do you prefer a session which is more interactive and I take just these questions from the live chat itself? Please let me know in the comments below, and thank you so much everybody for all your questions. I really enjoyed today's session, and I will see you in next week's live stream once again very soon. Until then, take care, keep asking questions, keep raising your standards. Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.